I mean, like in the local area.
Yeah, local area.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You see me?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Oh no. எங்க அவர் பேர்ல வருது அவருக்கு என் பேர்ல வருது oh my god பாத்தியா என்னோட பேர் வருது அவர்துல
Okay, we'll continue to participants. Wait for a few more. There's a lot of background noise at the moment. Can you hear me okay?
எங்க ஆடியோவே வரல எனக்கு
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So has everyone got access to the Krishna book now?
Yeah.
Papa Krishna
Oh, well, I have got book.
Yeah, great.
I have got actual book.
Okay. So I'll just explain how this session will be run. As some of you have joined me from the Bhagavad Gita study, which we did for the last 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and some of you are new to this group, which is now continuing into Krishna Book group. So there's a few things I need to point out, and how this is going to be run. It's a little bit different to how we did the Bhagavad Gita. So this session today is going to be an orientation session to explain how reflective reading is done, because this is more audience participation involvement. We're all going to read together, so it's not going to be boring. Believe me, it's going to be very fun and very interactive and very spiritually nourishing. We all need to have the Krishna book, of course. And what we'll do is I'll explain today.
Sure. Mama. Mama.
I'll just explain today how we're going to run the session. And then we'll do some of the reading today, but then really next week we'll start as a group and read together. So first of all,
okay
what is...
One second, I'm trying to make it better for you. 1 second.
We could all just go on mute initially. I think I can do that here myself. Okay, I'll put everybody on mute just for the time being. So what is reflective reading, first of all? Okay, so reading, everybody knows. Yes, reading is we're going to be reading the text together. Each one of us is going to read a little bit, either a page or a few paragraphs. So we'll all read a little bit. So be prepared. That means that we should all have our video screens on, because if we're all not visible, then it'll be difficult it'll be more like a telephone conversation. And actually what we're trying to create is a sangha here. So we want to be able to see everyone and hear everyone as well. So please try and keep your video screens on, especially if you're reading. Understand people need to go and attend things come up. If that's the case, then you can put your screen off. But for the most part, try and keep your screen on so we can all be together in one place, be attentive and together. So that's my request for this reading group. And then secondly, what is the reflective aspect? What is reflective reading? Reflective reading isn't just, let's say, it's different from passive reading, where someone is just reading the words on the page, right? I'm sure we've all experienced this before, where we've got a book and we're reading it and we get through a page and we begin the next page, and if we stop for a moment, we don't even remember like what were the things that we read. It happens especially if you read a lot and you're not familiar with this technique of reflective reading, or if generally just not being attentive in the reading, then it can happen where you just don't grasp the information. So what we want to do is read actively or reflectively, let's say. And so I'm using some guidance from some materials I found about reflective reading. and specifically how to read Shastra, scriptures, in this way. So I will explain some of the principles for reflective reading. There's 15 principles I'll go through. So please listen to this attentively, as this is going to be the foundation of how we read reflectively, okay? So these are principles from improving our sadhu sangha, okay? So number one, the first principle of good sadhu sangha is to hear from a liberated, pure devotee of Krishna. So what we're going to do is we're going to read Krishna Book, but actually this Krishna Book was dictated by Srila Prabhupada. He used a dictaphone to speak the Krishna Book. It wasn't so much that he was writing the book, but he actually spoke it. So when we're reading it, we're reading his spoken words. And in that way we are associating with the pure devotee. We're associating with Srila Prabhupada through the reading. The second principle is that we're going to discuss Srila Prabhupada's purports with the devotees. So first of all, we're hearing it, and then secondly, we're discussing it. So what is Prabhupada actually saying? Can we put it into our own simple way of understanding? That's what the discussion will be. Can we raise questions about what's being said? The third principle is Sadhu Sangha is to discuss Srila Prabhupada's books regularly. And therefore, we've been having these weekly meetings. And so this is a regular group for us. It's important to attend on a regular basis, because if you miss a week, then you miss a portion of the pastimes, and you miss the ability to connect all the dots. So how one event leads to another in Krishna's leelas, in his pastimes. Then the fourth principle is to discuss Srila Prabhupada's books systematically. And so we've been doing that because we started with the Bhagavad Gita, which is considered the ABCD of spiritual life. Then next is considered the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then finally, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is considered the most advanced teachings in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. So Srila Prabhupada would compare it to someone studying for a BA, and then a PH, and then for someone studying for like a high school level, A level. Then you have after that a bachelor's degree, and then you have a PhD degree. So we're also studying in that way of starting with Bhagavad Gita, and then we're reading Krishna Book, which is a summary of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we'll go on to further text after that in a systematic way. Principle number 5, and this is something we can all try to do, even if we are not familiar with reflective reading, is we can try to repeat in our own words the meanings of the sentences we read. So Srila Prabhupada has a particular style of presentation, and to be able to grasp that, let us try and repeat in our own words, say in our own way, in the way that it resonates with us. What is the message that is being conveyed? So that's principle number 5. Number 6, scrutinize, or in other words, unpack the meaning of the sentences and phrases, word by word if necessary. Srila Prabhupada once said that every word has great meaning. He's very selectively chosen how to explain the teachings of Krishna and the pastimes of Krishna. And so there's a great importance in understanding it the way that it has been taught, word for word. Even Srila Prabhupada's translations, as we've seen, as we were going through Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada translated each and every single word that Krishna spoke. So it's so scrutinizingly done. And we can study in a similar way. The 7th principle is to accept that there can be different and valid understandings. Because spiritual life is actually very personal, it's highly personal. And what something means to me may be different to what it means to you. And this is actually where the books come to life. The books are alive in that they will speak to you differently to the way they speak to me. Because these are spiritual teachings, they're living teachings. They're not mundane, they're not material teachings. They're not facts and figures, but actually they will resonate in our lives if we can apply them. So, so let's accept that we can each have different viewpoints on the teachings. Or in other words, let's not debate over, no, my viewpoint is right or my viewpoint is wrong, or someone's viewpoint is wrong, like that. But let us learn to appreciate each other's perspective. Then the 8th principle is to try to help our discussion partners in developing their understanding by using empathetic hearing skills. So if I'm reflecting what I've understood, then it's also equally worthy of someone to be able to listen. So there's not only reading and speaking, but sometimes when we read something and we really want to share the point, then we just want to wait for our turn to be able to speak. But it's also a skill to be able to listen to what is being said, or as mentioned here, empathetic listening, emphatic listening. So listen with empathy that this person is explaining from their feelings and their emotions and their understanding about this text. And number 9 is that discuss with humility, with gratitude, with a mutual appreciation and respect. So this is principle number 9. So of course there is the right, correct perspective of the teachings which Srila Prabhupada is bringing out, and not everyone has a very advanced understanding of the scriptures, and that's okay. We're all trying to understand at our own level, and there may be a higher level of understanding or a more simple, and even sometimes an incorrect level of understanding. Sometimes we don't understand things in the way that they're presented. But as we're all trying to help each other in this sadhu sangha, we want to appreciate mutually everyone's contribution, and there should be opportunity in the next principle, which is to ask questions that help clarify Srila Prabhupada's intended meaning. So this is the next one. So if someone isn't correct or off the mark a little bit, then principle 9 is that we should listen with mutual respect. But the 10th principle is that there should be questions asked. So we can teach each other in a respectful way, or in other words, if someone isn't saying something which is correct or has been a misunderstanding, then the point isn't to point out the fault or the mistake, but maybe if you ask the question to the facilitator, that is it like this or is it like that, in order to bring out the true meaning of the text. So we can ask questions for ourselves and also ask questions to help others, and that's less offensive or less critical in the course of the discussion. The number 11 is don't accept blindly. And this is the wonderful thing about our tradition, is that the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and the practice, it isn't dogmatic, and it isn't autocratic. It isn't that you must do this and you have to do this and this is the way it is and there's no other way about it. But so much of our scriptures, they are presented through questions and answers. They're presented in a way that you can remove your doubts and confusions, misgivings. So we shouldn't accept what we read blindly. We shouldn't just think that, well, Srila Prabhupada is saying, so I accept. But we should actually try and engage our thought process, our intelligence in why is Prabhupada saying this? How is it relevant for me? What does it mean culturally, or what does it mean to society at large? What does it mean to our ISKCON society, or even just this community of reading group that we have? What does it mean to me as an individual? try to understand, not blindly, but try to understand the principle and the application in different perspectives. Number 12 is try to ask your questions in a submissive mood, not in a challenging mood. So as we had finished as we were going through Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also gives this principle that we should approach the spiritual master submissively in a mood of service. And so that principle is again here, tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya. So that was Krishna's teachings in the 4th chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Number 13 is ask questions that help you to understand the application of what you have understood. So it's one thing to know a lot of the philosophy or know the beautiful pastimes of Krishna and all the colorful details of his activities. But the principle of asking questions is actually to understand, what does it mean for me? How can I apply this? In other words, when we hear about Krishna and we speak about Krishna, then we should go away and be able to remember Krishna more and more and more in our day-to-day life. Because we always want to, as Krishna says, man mana bhava mad bhakto, we should always remember him with our minds, and then we can offer respect to him for who he really is. Mam yaji mam namaskuru. Then principle 14 is if we're trying to in the course of discussion, trying to answer people's doubts or trying to present a particular viewpoint, then try to use scriptural statements or what we've heard from respectable Vaishnavas to support your perspective. Now, this doesn't mean that we should all have to be scholars and that sort, but it's helpful if you want to bring across a particular viewpoint, then you back that up with some scriptural reference if it's possible to do so. But don't let that prohibit you from sharing. And if you don't know any scriptural statements, then you can say, this is my understanding. Is there any way that this is supported in the scripture? And then that in itself can create a wonderful discussion. So this is principle 14. Now principle 15, chant Hare Krishna mantra regularly and follow the regulative principles. Now you might ask, what's this got anything to do with reflective reading? Right? But actually it has a lot to do with our consciousness and our ability to accept Shastra, scripture. Because if we have a pure heart, a pure mind, if we have controlled senses and we're sober, then that really opens up the gates of knowledge, as we read in Bhagavad Gita. All of these senses are like gates, and they open up as we purify our life. So following these principles of chanting and the regulative principles, we can hear the message purely, without distortion, without disturbed senses. And so the final one, number 16, sorry, I might have said that was 15 before, 16 principles. Number 16 is practice and then preach the principles of good sadhu sangha. So, and this one is probably the most difficult one, because it's very easy for one person to say, this is what it means, this is what we should do, this is the way we should live. But if we can't implement that in our own life, then how valid is what we're trying to teach others? And again, of course, we're all coming from different backgrounds, we're all at different levels of spiritual practice. So it's not that one has to be a perfect and pure devotee to share in this group, but there should be this awareness that, or at least this humility to say that, I'm not perfect, but at least from what I can see in the examples I've seen in others, this is the right way to go about having a good sadachar, or a good right behavior, or the right Vaishnava behavior, the right principles. So these are just some nice principles that I thought I would share. Appreciate I've spoken quite a bit already and we haven't started, but I'm trying to shape this group in a way, or the way I'd like to facilitate this group is in a way that we can all learn from each other and share with each other, rather than as a facilitator, me just reading, hearing my voice for 1.5 hours on end. I'm sure it would be not as interesting for you, and I said it, and you wouldn't get as much from it. So let us use this as an opportunity to share with each other. As I was saying earlier, just if we can keep the video screens on, that would be very nice, because then we can see who's reading. And it's said that communication, much of communication is expressed through the person that we see. Physically, communication is expressed rather than what we hear, just hearing alone. So we all have the wonderful technologies of the internet. This Zoom call allows us to speak together and see each other as well. So let's use the full facilities to our advantage and communicate more effectively. Now, so let's move on to actually reading some of the Krishna book. I wanted to start from the very beginning, and just bear with me while I bring my book up on the screen. Srila Prabhupada begins with a dedication, and then there's a message from Apple, or specifically George Harrison, and then there's the preface and introduction, and so on. Goes into chapter 1 from there. So in terms of the reflective reading format, as I said earlier, we'll formally start chapter 1. It will probably be next week now, but I think it's important to read some of these introductory sections, because not everyone will be familiar with the Krishna book and how it came about. So I will also share something a little further down the line about that and how the Krishna book came about, because it's actually a wonderful miracle that Srila Prabhupada was able to publish this book. Because of course we all know the humble beginnings of Srila Prabhupada, starting with nothing and heading for the Western world, and creating a whole international society with a group of like misfit hippies. Srila Prabhupada said, "My mission is to turn hippies into happies." So in fact, many things that Srila Prabhupada did were miraculous, and this Krishna book is no less. So I will share something a little further along the line about how the production of the book came about. Let us start first of all with the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, and then we'll go into the reading of the book. I'll try and follow this format going forward. Okay. So I think that many of you are familiar with the song Jaya Radha Madhava. Usually it's sung before the classes. Of course, with Zoom, it's not possible for everyone to sing along together. I tried this previously in a different forum, and there's actually a 2-second lag of time between the call and the response. And so what happens is I'll be singing the first part of the song, and then it'll be 2-3 seconds along before you hear it, and then when you sing back, I'll already be further down the song. So bear with me and stay on mute, and I'll just go through the Jai Radha Madhava song. You can all sing, of course, but just remain on mute. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivanadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jannaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jannaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Okay, so just begin now with the invocation prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So as I said, we're all going to be reading and taking in turns. So I'd like to ask if anyone could volunteer to read the first section, which is the dedication. This is just a very short paragraph by Srila Prabhupada in his dedication. So I can see Jai Prakash Lakhani is here. I'll unmute you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Good service you're doing here. Hare Krishna, everyone. Right. I'm reading from the Bhaktivedanta Vedabase.
Yes.
That's okay? Yeah. Okay. To my father, Gaur Mohan Dey, 1849-1930, a pure devotee of Krishna who raised me as a Krishna conscious child from the beginning of my life. In my boyhood ages, he instructed me how to play the mridanga. He gave me Radha Krishna Vigra to worship, and he gave me Jagannath Rath to duly observe the festival as my childhood play. He was kind to me. I imbibed from him the ideas later on solidified by my spiritual master, the Eternal Father.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being our first volunteer to read as well.
That's okay.
So here Srila Prabhupada is expressing his gratitude to his father. So I would just like to explain that in another place, Srila Prabhupada explains in a different way why he's dedicated this book to his father. So from what I remember in the conversation is that Srila Prabhupada, the conversation is actually in Dallas that Srila Prabhupada has, and he's explaining how his father wanted him to be a great mridanga player and a devotee of Srimati Radharani. And his mother wanted him to be a lawyer. And so Prabhupada would study his material education alongside studying how to play mridanga. And both were given equal importance in his life from a young age. So his mother would say to him how, why is it that you're wasting all your time playing mridanga? What will it give you? But his father was more favorable, and so his father wanted to impress upon him the importance of Krishna consciousness, and therefore in that conversation he attributed the Krishna book dedication to his father. Okay, so anyone else like to share any points from here, this text? It's rather a short one, this one. So we can use the, you can raise your hand if you want to say something on the participant window. I see Sashi Patel has a hand raised. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhu, I just wanted to know what the instrument, the madanga, is. I've never heard of it.
The mridanga, so this is the same drum that I was just playing here.
Okay.
This is a Bengali instrument, a Bengali drum. Yeah, sometimes called a khol as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on. So the next section is called From Apple. And these are the words of George Harrison. Would anyone like to read this? It's like about a page. Please raise your hand if you'd like to read. You can see Madhavi Mataji's here. She's raising her hand. Let me see if I can find you in the chat window. Can you take yourself off mute, Mataji? Can't see you anymore. Okay, let me see if I can find you. Okay. Right, there we go. Unmute. I think your microphone is, maybe it's not active. So maybe it's something to do with the settings, because I can't unmute you from here. So maybe you can ask for another volunteer this time, and we can see what we can do to help you technically for the next round.
I'll do that. Prabhu, I'll do that. Subarna Radha, Suraj Vaid.
Okay. Yes, please.
All right. Everybody is looking for Krishna. Some don't realize that they are, but they are. That they are, but they are. Krishna is God, the source of all that exists, the cause of all that is, was, or ever will be. As God is unlimited, he has many names. Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, Ram, all are Krishna, all are one. God is not abstract. He has both the impersonal and the personal aspect to his personality, which is supreme, eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. As a single drop of water has the same qualities as an ocean of water, so has our consciousness, the qualities of God's consciousness. But though our identification and attachment with material energy, physical body, sense pleasure, material, possession, ego, etc., our true transcendental consciousness has been polluted, and like a dirty mirror, it is unable to reflect a pure image. With many lives, our association with the temporary has grown. This impermanent body, a bag of bones and flesh, is mistaken for our true self, and we accept this temporary condition to be final. Through all ages, great saints have remained as living proof that this non-temporary permanent state of God consciousness can be revived in all living souls. Each soul is potentially divine. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, steady in the self, being freed from all material contamination, the yogi achieves the highest perfection stage of happiness, in touch with the Supreme Personality. Yoga, a scientific method for God's self-realization, is the process by which we purify our consciousness, stop further pollution, and arrive at the state of perfection, full knowledge, full bliss. If there's a God, I want to see him. It's pointless to believe in something without proof. And Krishna consciousness and meditation are methods where you can actually obtain God perception. You can actually see God and hear him, play with him. It might sound crazy, but he is actually there, actually with you. There are many yogi paths, Raja, Jnana, Hatha, Kriya, Karma, Bhakti, which are all acclaimed by the masters of each method. Swami Bhaktivedanta is, as his title says, a Bhakti yogi, following the path of devotion by serving God through each thought, word, and deed, and by chanting of his holy names, the devotees quickly develop God consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. One inevitably arrives at Krishna conscious. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. I request that you take advantage of this book, Krishna, and enter into its understanding. I also request that you make an appointment to meet your God now through the self-liberating process of yoga, union, and give peace a chance. George Harrison.
Thank you so much for reading that.
Thank you.
So let's try and have a little discussion around this section. So this is a wonderful contribution from George Harrison. Isn't it very nice how he brings together so poetically and thoughtfully these different points? So let's try and use some of the principles which we discussed. Let's take a moment to reflect some things which have stood out for us in the text here. Some points we can share, which we appreciate and why, and how they relate to us, either as individuals or collectively, or how they can help society. I can see Lakshmi Patel has a hand raised. So if I can unmute you now. Would you like to share something? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. The thing that stands out to me is about God not being impersonal. He's a person, and that's why we need to know him. We need to find out more about him. And to me, that's what Krishna Book is all about, to understand and find out all about Krishna's pastimes and just get really kind of up close and personal so that we can, just treat him like a person. He's not impersonal, he's not abstract, like the paragraph here says. He's supreme, eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. And all through Krishna consciousness, there's always a massive emphasis on, the impersonal and being wary of the Mayavadis and so on. So I think that's kind of sticking out the most for me just now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You picked up really essential point there. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share something from this section? I can see Madhavi has a microphone working now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Right. It's regarding the qualities of us compared to Krishna, as is explained that the drop of water has the same quality as the ocean of water, and so has our consciousness, qualities of God with God consciousness. But we have been identifying our body as the final thing, and the attachment to the senses and all that, physical body and sense pleasures and that. So without really reflecting our actual reflection of that, it's a reflection in a mirror. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, you brought that point out about how Krishna's true nature and how we are a reflection of his true nature. And we are lost in this untrue or temporary kind of nature. Yeah. Would anyone else like to add to this? My mom has a hand raised. Unmute you, Mom. Maybe your microphone isn't set up because I can't unmute you. So when you join the meeting, just
I've unmuted. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, what really stood out for me is the mention that if there is God, I want to see him. It's pointless to believe in something without proof. So that really stood out for me. And Krishna consciousness and meditations are methods where you can actually obtain God perception. And I found this quite helpful for myself, because if you go step by step and follow the process, you can, there is a possibility that you can hear him and feel him actually. There are different parts, but all the other parts are quite difficult to follow, like jnana and hatha and karma yoga, and these other parts seem to be quite difficult to follow. So I think that what he's mentioning is the proof is in testing the pudding itself. So for a long time, I was like questioning a lot of stuff myself before I joined Krishna consciousness. And after I started listening and questioning things to senior Vaishnavas, I found that, you know, it is yeah, you can follow the path, and maybe at one point you can kind of perceive him.
Yeah. So maybe if I can recap a little bit. So just bringing these two nice points together then. So it's the experience of Krishna consciousness is really available through this path of bhakti. And so if we can get to this point where we don't identify ourselves with, like they said here, is a dirty mirror. We're looking at ourselves as the body, as the mind, as the senses. But if we purify this impression of ourselves, then we can experience Krishna. And by hearing about Krishna, reading about Krishna, we can feel Krishna. And then as we become purified through that, we can experience him more and more in our life. Yeah. Okay, would anyone else like to share anything in this section? Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I'll unmute you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Satyananda here.
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you now.
All right. You know, we keep our philosophy, what we are practicing is based on I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul. And we keep hearing this in so many lectures. Now, here one paragraph. If we understand this, I mean, if we read this, it gives us a basic knowledge of how we understand I'm not this body and I'm spirit soul. With many lives, our association with the temporary has grown. This impermanent body, a bag of bones and flesh, is mistaken for our true self. And we have accepted this temporary condition to be final. So that gives you basic understanding what it means. I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yes. So that's an essential thing to understand before, so to speak, jumping into the deep end of Krishna Leela. Yes. So if we just think that Krishna is an ordinary boy, an ordinary cowherd boy, then we really have missed the point if we haven't understood this part, that we're actually different from our body. Yeah. And if we understand we're beyond the body, then we can understand that beyond the body there's a soul which is servant of Krishna, and this is the activities of that master of ours, Krishna. I can see Michelle here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to get a bit of clarity about the bit about if there's a God, I want to see him. Does that mean that we see him as that go on around us rather than seeing him in the temple as a form of a deity? I didn't quite understand that section.
I couldn't quite hear your question because it cut out a little bit when you said.
Okay. So I had the question about where it says, if there's a God, I want to see him.
Yes.
Is that sort of seeing the physical form of him? Like, for example, when you go and you see Krishna on the altar or the deities, or is it more seeing Krishna or the form of God and the things that you see in your everyday life? Is that what that means? I couldn't kind of understand how we can see God. Is it seeing the form of him or just seeing his influence around us?
Very nice question. Yeah. Thanks for raising the question.
I think it's more about experiencing him, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's experiencing him, feeling him. That's my perception. What do you think?
Yeah, so Sushmita Mataji here is saying it's about experiencing him and feeling him in a day-to-day life. Okay. Would anyone else like to add?
Yeah, you can kind of, adding on to Susmita Mataji, you can kind of experience through the prayers, and especially when you are in a distress, when you're praying deeply for maybe the distress to go away or something like that. When it happens, you can feel him like that. So that is another way of feeling God, because you know that you can't deal with this situation, whatever situation it is, and you're feeling deeply in prayer. And when you get a helping hand from somewhere, somehow, to help you in that distress and in that situation, you can feel there is a presence of God.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Have you gone to the temple? I mean, do you actually go to the temple and look at the deities?
So who is the question towards?
I think even when you go to the temple and you even in your own house and you actually look at the deities, you can actually see things. I mean, this is my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel they emote to you, and their mood comes across to you. I don't know whether you experience it as well, but this is my experience of knowing that Krishna is with me. He's laughing with me, crying with me, just sharing things with me, every little thing, or just small things. You're just upset about something, and you share it with him. I think you will see a difference. This is what I feel. I do not know about what you think.
You're asking this to Michelle? Yeah?
To the whole group?
Okay. Maybe before we just go in that direction, because I want to take the point as it's written here, and then we can move on, is that Michelle raised this statement here. If there's a God, I want to see him. It's pointless in believing something without proof. And Krishna consciousness and meditation are methods where you can actually obtain God perception. You can actually see God and hear him, play with him. It might sound crazy, but he's actually there, actually with you. So the thought I had from this was in two places, George Harrison says he actually wants to see Krishna. In fact, he even sings that song, I really want to see you, my sweet Lord, isn't it? So he's actually talking about both not just experiencing Krishna, as he says here through meditation, but he's also saying that he actually wants to see Krishna face to face, just like I'm seeing you and you're seeing me. And Prabhupada says in many places that this is very much possible, to see Krishna just like I'm seeing you and you're seeing me. So this is something I took from this paragraph, but also the points you've all made are valid and true, that you can experience Krishna as well. And that's the proof that we're experiencing Krishna. And then further along, we will one day, by Krishna's grace, be able to see him.
Can I just add one point, please?
I think Madhavi Mataji and Satyanarayan Prabhu would also want to share something, if that's okay. because it's quite a large group, I want to just give a chance.
Yes.
Yes, something at this point.
Yeah, it's about instead of seeing Krishna face to face, we rather experience, feeling Krishna. I think whenever we want to see something or when we want to understand something, it's always the media, isn't it? So how I understand, instead of seeing Krishna face to face, we like to experience and we like to feel to be with Krishna. So we can see, where we get this feeling actually, through his pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada is one of them. And associating with the advanced devotees. So this is, I'm trying to share with my understanding.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. So your experience is through the experience of the pure devotees, and that way you experience Krishna himself. Yes, thank you. And there was a question which I haven't addressed yet, and that is, do you want to bring that one back up again, Sashi, Mataji?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I don't remember asking a question. It was just about the instrument at the beginning of the session.
Okay, okay. I
didn't have a question after that. Thank you.
Okay, my mistake. Okay, well, if that was okay, Michelle, we'll move on. Yeah, okay. So what time is it now? We have about half an hour left. Is there anything else we could raise from this section? Of course, every word, every sentence, there's so much to say. So would anyone else like to share anything, maybe as a final point before we move on? And if not, that's okay as well. Yes, I can see Michelle has hand raised.
Is that better? Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna, yes.
Okay. I liked the last sentence that says that you make an appointment to meet your God now, because I think it is kind of an urgent thing that people don't realize that, you know, we're so quick to make an appointment to see the doctor, but it is important to make an appointment and make time to see God, to, you know, meet God and get to know him. I really like that as well, that sentence.
Yeah, that is very nice. Yeah, nice way to close there. Make an appointment to meet Krishna. And would anyone like to add to that? Or any questions, of course, welcome. You can see Kritika has hand up as well.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I like when Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, steady is the self being freed from all material contamination. The yogi achieves the highest perfection stage of happiness in touch with supreme consciousness. So we are the happiest when we are in touch with Krishna, when we are in touch with the supreme personality of Godhead, because we are all looking for happiness and we are looking for it in different places. And the truth is that we'll find happiness when we are with the supreme personality of Godhead.
Very nice, yes.
No understanding.
Yeah, these, I guess we can bring these two points together somewhat, because this is what Krishna Book is all about. It's about our appointment with Krishna, isn't it? We're taking the time out to be with Krishna and become immersed in his activities, his pastimes, which are eternal and going on always. and this is actually our yoga, our union with Krishna. And so this is what Prabhupada is saying, that we, the perfectional stage is to be in touch, to be in union with Krishna. So thank you both. I just wanted to have a little bit of a segue here into why George Harrison is writing this section from Apple. So because I think it's important to understand how this Krishna book came about, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the history of the Krishna book is interesting, and if we're going to go on this journey together, it's nice to know the origins of the book, isn't it? So I don't know how many people are aware, but Srila Prabhupada, when he came to England, or rather before he came to England, had one of his disciples, Shama Sundar. Actually, there were 6 of his disciples that had come here, and a baby. And Sham Sundar was one of them. And it was actually Sham Sundar who met George Harrison from the Beatles. That's a big story in itself, and a wonderful pastime of Krishna's arrangement. But he became quickly very, very good friends with George Harrison. And Prabhupada would often write to him to ask George Harrison, or as he would say indirectly, please see if your friend can fund the Krishna book. So he was writing to Srila Prabhupada was writing to Sham Sundar, his disciple, from America, instructing him that he should see how Sham Sundar could involve George Harrison in the publication of the book. Of course, George Harrison, being from the Beatles, the biggest pop group in the world, could afford the printing of the book. But Sham Sundar had this policy that he didn't want to ask anything from George Harrison, because he didn't want to come across as just being like another, like a charity case, that he wanted to gain something out of his friendship with George Harrison. He wanted to have that genuine friendship of giving to him. So on different occasions, Srila Prabhupada asked him, up to the point when Srila Prabhupada came to England, and he called him up to his room. And this was amidst the very busy time of the temple opening. Just before the temple opening, the first Radha Krishna temple in the ISKCON world, which was in London, in Bury Place. And Sham Sundar was busy making an altar for the Lordship Sri Sri Radha London Ishwara of London, the Lord of London, as Prabhupada called him. And Prabhupada called him into the room and then he asked him, so you're going today to meet George? Because George was going to fund the altar, the marble altar, which we actually still have the base of the altar, even though the temple has moved. And since the temple has been renovated, we still have that marble base of the altar. And so George Harrison knew a person who was like an expert in carving marble. And so then he was going to meet him about this. And so George Sham Sundar said, yes, I'm going to meet George today. And then Prabhupada reminded him that I want you to ask him to print this book. And the printing cost from the Daya Nippon printers is $19,000. And Prabhupada knew that he was a little bit hesitant. So he knew that Sham Sundar was hesitant, and he said, well, I don't feel like asking, because if we ask him, then he may, go a step away from us. So Prabhupada cleverly said that, so you please say it's my request. In other words, Prabhupada was saying, just blame me, that I've told you to do this. And so in that way, he goes with a bit of a heavy heart out to see George Harrison, and they go to the like the warehouse, or maybe it was a factory, or where the marble was being set up. And they spend the day there, and George is kind of inspecting the quality and of the workmanship and so on. And so that goes on, and the day ends, and they go back to George's place. He was staying, I think, in South London at the time. and they have a meal, a vegetarian meal, has been specially prepared because Shyam Sundar's coming. And they're having the dinner conversation, and small talk and like just a light, friendly chatter. And in the back of his mind, in the back of Shyam Sundar's mind, this question is kind of still standing there, and he's not really prepared or ready to ask. And the meal goes on and finishes even, and then the last moment he says, and at this point there it begins to rain as well, and then heavy rainfall is there in the background. And then like he plucks up the courage and he thinks, well, I just have to ask him, now is my chance because I have to leave. So he plucks up the courage and he says, and I'll just read it from the narration here itself. He says, just bear with me a second. So Srila Prabhupada wanted me to ask you something, and he showed him a picture from the book, Krishna, that he's been working on this large volume of Krishna Book for quite some time now. And here are some of the paintings. He hands over the paintings from the book, and he says, and it's all about the birth and the pastimes and activities of Krishna, how he kills different demons. And he wanted me to ask you if you would print this book. And so he's trying to explain it in a kind of haphazard way. And as the rain is building up outside, suddenly a thunderbolt, a flash of lightning hits the house that they're sitting in, and the lights go off. So all the electricity is cut. Okay, so this is in his South London mansion, and the electricity all goes down, and they're sitting in the dark now. And so 10 seconds go by in silence, and Shyam Sundar's thinking, oh, I've blown it, I've spoiled it, I shouldn't have said. And then the lights come back on eventually, and there's a little bit of silence, and then George starts laughing. He says, well, that's it, isn't it? How much does it cost? And he says, $19,000. And so George says, well, I'll come and speak to the Swamiji tomorrow. I'll come and speak to Srila Prabhupada tomorrow, and we'll see. And so then they wrap up the evening, and he goes home like, disheartened and disappointed, despondent. But the next morning, Srila Prabhupada calls him into his room, into his quarters. And of course, he comes in and he bows down to pay his respects. And before he's even done so, Srila Prabhupada sort of blurts out, as it says here, he'll print the Krishna Book. So it was like a great victory for Srila Prabhupada. He said, see, I told you, Krishna would help all along. And so this is an account from Shyam Sundar in his book called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, because Prabhupada would say, always aim for the white rhino. Prabhupada always had his disciples do the most daring, audacious things. And Prabhupada described it to be like, if you're gonna aim for the white rhino, if you're gonna go hunting, and you aim to hunt a white rhino, and you don't get that rhino, people will say to you, well, it was a white rhino, they're rare, and it's difficult, right? So no loss. But then if you actually get the white rhino, if you shoot the white rhino, that's amazing. You actually, got the white rhino. So Prabhupada would explain Krishna consciousness to be that way. It should be fun and adventurous. And so this book is full of the pastimes of Shyam Sundar and Srila Prabhupada in there, what he calls Krishna magic. And they were having these adventures practically every day. So I'm sorry to kind of deviate a little bit from the reading of Krishna Book, but I hope that gives a nice background into how this text came about and how it was funded. So we have like now 20 minutes left, and we'll move on to the preface now of the book. And perhaps what we can do for this section is there are multiple paragraphs here, so we can just take one paragraph each and we'll just rotate around. So please don't be shy to read along. and of course everyone's encouraged to read. It doesn't matter if you have a, let's say, a radio voice or not. It's okay. And main thing is that we can all read and share together. And if there's any points that come up after each question, after each paragraph, then feel free to stick your hand up on the participant screen, and we can continue discussion. And we'll finish where we finish in 20 minutes, and we'll continue next week. Okay. So perhaps I could start in this preface with the Sanskrit here. Nivritti tasya upagiyam manad pavu sadach chotra manobhiratmat kautama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajeta vinapashuganat. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 1st chapter, text 4. And there's no translation here, but if I can find it, I'll just read the translation. So here it said, glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system, that is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? So Prabhupada begins with this quotation, which I've read the translation for. Okay, so Prabhupada continues. In the Western countries, when someone sees the cover of a book like Krishna, he immediately asks, who is Krishna? Who is the girl with Krishna, etc.? The immediate answer is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How is that? Because he conforms in exact detail to descriptions of the Supreme Being, the Godhead. In other words, Krishna is the Godhead because he is all attractive. Outside the principle of all attraction, there is no meaning to the word Godhead. How is it one can be all attractive? First of all, if one is very wealthy, if he has great riches, he becomes attractive to the people in general. Similarly, if one is very powerful, he also becomes attractive. And if someone is very famous, he also becomes attractive. And if someone is very beautiful or wise or unattached to all kinds of possessions, he also becomes attractive. So, from practical experience, we can observe that one is attractive due to 1, wealth, 2, power, 3, fame, 4, beauty, 5, wisdom, and 6, renunciation. One who is in possession of all 6 of these opulences at the same time, who possesses them to an unlimited degree, is understood to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These opulences of the Godhead are delineated by Parashar Muni, a great Vedic authority. So I'll just stop here. You can see Jai Prakash has his hand raised. I'll unmute you here now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We have seen many rich persons, many powerful persons, many famous persons, many beautiful persons, many learned and scholarly persons, and persons in the renounced order of life unattached to material possessions. But we have never seen any one person who is unlimitedly and simultaneously wealthy, powerful, famous, beautiful, wise, and unattached, like Krishna. In the history of humanity, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a historical person. who appeared on this earth 5,000 years ago. He stayed on this earth for 125 years, played exactly like a human being, but his activities were unparalleled. From the very moment of his appearance to the moment of his disappearance, every one of his activities is unparalleled in the history of the world. And therefore, anyone who knows what we mean by Godhead will accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is equal to the Godhead, and no one is greater than him. This is the import of the familiar saying, God is great. Want to continue?
If you could just stop there for a moment.
Okay.
Of course, I'm just inviting anyone to raise comments and questions as well as we go along. So feel free to raise your hand in the chat window so that I can see you, as I may not see you on the screen while reading. I wanted to just share a reflection I had from this first paragraph, if I can. And this is where in the closing sentence, Prabhupada speaks about Parasha Muni. So just to give a little bit of context, who is Parasha Muni? He is the father of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, who we know is the author of all the Vedas. But Parasha Muni in particular spoke the Vishnu Puran. And so this is a very authoritative statement he makes about the 6 opulences of God. So these are the 6, and without any one of these 6, one cannot be classified as the Godhead, as Prabhupada terms the Godhead, the head of all gods. So this comes from the Vishnu Puran, which is from Parasha Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. If anyone wants to ask or comment, we can stop or we can continue now. If anyone else would like to read, you can ask another volunteer. It would be nice to have different readers. So Amanda's here. I'll unmute you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please continue.
Okay, so there are various classes of men in the world who speak of God in different ways, but according to the Vedic literatures and according to the great acharyas, the authorized persons versed in the knowledge of God in all ages, like acharyas Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Vishnu Swami, Lord Chaitanya, and all their followers by disciplic succession, all unanimously agree that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as we, the followers of Vedic civilization, are concerned, we accept the Vedic history of the whole universe, which consists of different planetary systems called Swargaloka, or the higher planetary system, Martyaloka, or the intermediary planetary system, and Patalaloka, or the lower planetary system. The modern historians of this earth cannot supply historical evidences of events that occurred before 5,000 years ago. And the anthropologists say that 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had not appeared on this planet because evolution had not reached that point. But the Vedic histories such as the Puranas and Mahabharata relate human histories which extend millions and billions of years into the past.
Yes, thank you. Do we have another person for reading, please? Or if anyone would like to go again and read. I can see Madhavi Mataji and Satyanarayan Prabhu. Okay, let's take Michelle and then Madhavi Mataji, because I can unmute you easily from here. Or if you want to raise a question. Did you want to raise a question or comment? Okay, Michelle, you're on now.
For example, from these literatures, we are given the histories of Krishna's appearances and disappearances millions and billions of years ago. In the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that both he and Arjuna had had many births before, and that he, Krishna, could remember all of them, but Arjuna could not. This illustrates the difference between the knowledge of Krishna and that of Arjuna. Arjuna might have been a very great warrior, a well-cultured member of the Kuru dynasty, but after all, he was an ordinary human being, whereas Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the possessor of unlimited knowledge. Because he possesses unlimited knowledge, Krishna has a memory that is boundless.
Thank you. And I found Madhvi Mataji now, so I can unmute you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu wants to read, so I'll give him a chance.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Krishna's knowledge is so perfect that he remembers all the incidences of his appearances some millions and billions of years in the past. But Arjuna's memory and knowledge are limited by time and space. For he is an ordinary human being. In the 4th chapter, Krishna states that he can remember instructing the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita some millions of years as to the sun god Vivaswan.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I just wanted to raise perhaps a comment, perhaps a question actually. Why do we think that Srila Prabhupada is bringing up these points here about the different authorities who are presenting Vedic literatures, about the different planetary systems, about the conversation of Krishna and Arjuna, and now about Krishna's memory and his instructions to Vivaswan. So what is the context? What do we think? How can we reflect on what's being said here? Would anyone like to comment and share? Yes, Sachinarayan Prabhu.
Krishna is teaching us by example.
Krishna is teaching us by example. Be a little bit more specific, please.
As a media using Arjuna and other personalities.
Okay, so we can learn from these different examples, these different acharyas, and from Arjuna as well. Okay, that's nice. Okay. And Michelle, would you like to share something as well?
Could it be that he's trying to give the example of Arjuna as a human so that we realize that we only have a very limited vision or understanding of the bigger picture, which Krishna kind of knows everything on such a big scale? So, I was thinking maybe that's why he's bringing in all the planetary systems, whereas we might only know our little bubble of the people around us. But he's trying to show that, you know, we're only such a small part of it, being in the human form.
Yeah.
Maybe that was kind of my understanding.
That's a nice point, yeah. Thank you. And my mom has a hand raised as well. I'll unmute you. Haribol.
Haribol.
Yes.
I just thought maybe Prabhupada is trying to raise this point because just to let us know the supremacy of Krishna as a god. And because he is the god, he remembers everything from, like he remembers everything. And as a human being, we can't even remember our past life. So maybe he's trying to put a note that Krishna is supreme, and the absolute. So when we start reading his pastime in the Krishna book, we know beforehand that although he came as a human being and was acting the pastime like a human being, but he is the supreme, and there's so many pastimes of Krishna which are not perceivable by a normal human being. So probably he's trying to put the prefix that, you know, Krishna is the supreme.
Yeah.
So when we try to read his pastimes in the later chapters, we know that, you know, there are the planetary systems, and Krishna has created this whole world, and he can remember all his pastimes because he told the Gita to Vivasana. So, you know, he is the supreme.
Hmm.
To make that point through this prefix, Prabhupada is.
Yes, thank you, Mom. So Krishna, Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing the fact that Krishna is the supreme through these different ways, such as how he's spoken to Krishna, how he's spoken to Arjuna and Vivashwan as well. Yeah. So let's continue. Where are we now? So the next paragraph begins with nowadays. Do you have a volunteer for reading?
I'd like to read.
Yes, please.
My name is Vishalini. Nowadays, it is the fashion of the atheistic class of men to try to become God by following some mystic process. Generally, the atheists claim to be God by dint of their imagination of their meditational prowess. Krishna is not that kind of God. He does not become God by manufacturing some mystic process of meditations, nor does he become God by undergoing the severe austerities of the mystic yogic exercises. Properly speaking, he never becomes God because he is the Godhead in all circumstances.
Thank you. Okay. So we just have a couple of minutes left now. So I think we can wrap up this evening. So please send any feedback you have about the format that we have got for a reflective reading. Please send them to me directly, so we don't crowd the group with comments. And I will also send out some of these principles again, which I mentioned at the beginning. These 16 principles on reflective reading. Yeah, so we can all reflect on those, and hopefully make for a more enlivening reading session where we can share and learn from each other, and create this sort of friendship, a bond of friendship amongst each other as we hear each other's thoughts and understandings. Yeah. So yeah, just a couple of minutes left. So my thought on this particular last few paragraphs which you read is that it is the preface for the book. So if you think of the word, even the preface means before you have the face of the book, what is the book about? Before even understanding what the book is about, trying to understand a little bit about the context of the book. And so Prabhupada is wonderfully doing that here, because historically I was a book distributor. I would sell these books on the street. So you can imagine just stopping someone right there on the street and saying, "Here, take this 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana, the essence of all Vedic knowledge." It's like someone's like just thinking, well, I'm just going to go out to buy some eggs and bread and butter and milk, and you're giving me this. So Prabhupada is kindly prefacing the Krishna book, that he's introducing us to Krishna as the Supreme Person in this text, in this section which we're reading, by bringing out that he has these 6 opulences, that authorized religious leaders, the acharyas, all unanimously agree he's the Supreme Person. he's different from a human being because of his abilities, not because he's acquired these kind of skills through meditation, but that he's the supreme in all situations. And so Prabhupada is kind of taking away some of our misunderstandings which could come if we were to just pick this book up off a book distributor in the street. Let's say anyone on the street could get this book, and Srila Prabhupada swiftly jumps through 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam before coming into this 10th canto and placing it in your hand with this important preface to the book. So let's end here. It's 9 o'clock. Thanks everyone for your attention and your participation, your questions and comments. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Everybody.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for everything.